Everyone. Welcome to the Dauphin County Board of Commissioners workshop/legislative meeting for Wednesday, June 26th. Could we please stand for a moment of silence followed by the pledge to the flag? Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. So today is a unique time. We actually had celebrated the Juneteenth holiday last week for the first time in the county history. And so this week is a combined workshop slash legislative meeting. I want to remind all of you that we are on live stream. So we're trying to be more accessible and ensure that we have the ability to communicate and have citizen participation. So anything you say is recorded. I just want to make sure you're aware. The first order of business today is the approval of minutes, the June 5th, 2024 workshop meeting, and the June 12th, 2024 legislative meeting. Do I have a motion?
So
Moved by Commissioner Priest. Second by Commissioner Douglas. Any discussion? All those in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Ayes have it. Salary Board. Next is the approval of the June 12th, 2024 Salary Board meeting. Do I have a motion? So moved by Controller Bateman. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Douglas. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Ayes have it. All right, executive sessions held between meetings. Mr. Pease.
Good morning, Commissioners. There were no executive sessions held between meetings.
This is the first opportunity to have public participation on agenda items only. Is there anybody in the public that wishes to participate on agenda items? Hearing none. Our first presentation, directors and guests, are the presentation of bond restructuring and authorization of a financing team. Lou, Tim, and Scott, you want to come forward? Good morning.
Good morning. Is this already on?
Yeah.
Good.
Is the light on?
Red?
He's on. Yeah, they're giving us a thumbs
Good.
up from the booth.
Okay. Good morning, Commissioners. Start with a quick introduction of the financing team that's present here. Lou Verdelli, Raymond James, bond underwriter Ryan Brockman from my firm is here with us. Tim Horseman from McNeese, Wallace, and Nurek, bond counsel, and from PFM, Scott Shear, Zach Willier, and Garrett Moore. By way of background for this presentation, your administrators reached out to us several months ago, and they asked us to take a look at the debt component of the county's budget and look to see if there were any opportunities in that section of the county's budget for reducing expenses as they're working on the 2025 budget. So we all kind of put our minds together and looked at a lot of different scenarios. There's been a lot of back and forth with the administration in terms of potential scenarios to permanently lower the debt service for the 2025 budget and going forward, because we didn't want anything that was really just a one-time solution, but something that would be more permanent as you look at your long-term budget planning. Also, part of what we were asked to do was to identify funds that may be available for any ongoing maintenance that the county does on an annual basis, as well as potential capital projects among the county's facilities, and that the solution would address and provide money for that as well. So what we're going to present to you is what the team has formulated, what McNeese Wallace has reviewed from a legal standpoint under federal tax laws and our state borrowing pools, to make sure that it is something that the county could potentially pursue if you were interested. So what I'd like to do is just give a quick review of the county's debt. We'll look at some of these scenarios that we've put together, and then a potential timeline and a quick update on where interest rates are in the municipal bond market. Okay, so we'll start with the handout that has Dauphin County covered and turn to the first page, which is the summary of the county's existing general fund debt. This is debt that has been issued over the years for general fund projects of the county. I think one of the things that we've reminded your administration of when we had discussions is that when you look at this page for a county of the size of Dauphin County, the takeaway is clearly that the county is in a pretty good position in terms of a lower level of existing debt right now. When we look at that box, lower right, column 14 on the far right, the box that's shaded there, the county currently has 98.8 million of principal outstanding. For a county of this size, it's a pretty low debt level. I think the commissioners over the years have been pretty prudent in terms of the borrowing plans, that there has not been a large amount of debt issued over the years for any various projects. I think when you look at the top of column 14, which is the annual debt service that the county is scheduled to pay right now, it's also apparent when you see that debt service in this budget year, 2024, is about $17 million. And then next year it's about 16.5. You can see it drops a little bit to 15.7 and then 15.6. And then by 2028, pretty significant drop to 9 million at 4. So when we look at this, we would say the county is paying down its debt very rapidly. There's not a lot of long-term debt that is existing. So in terms of looking at opportunities of can we lower that line item in the budget for future budgets, because the debt is so short and the county's debt is relatively low, we look at those first 4 years and say, sure, we could kind of restructure that debt, move it out a few years, try to lower that so that in the 2025 budget and there forward, the number that you budget, instead of being 17 million, can be something less. And that's where we went through a lot of scenarios. The one that we're going to end up showing you brings that run rate down to about $10 million per year. So it lowers your annual debt service cost by about $7 million. We had one scenario where we were only getting it down by about 5 million. But I think this is probably the max in terms of the opportunity to reduce that on a permanent basis going forward. So we've yellowed, before we just leave this page, I'll highlight what we have shaded in yellow, which is column 7. These shaded areas are the 3 existing bond issues that we would be refinancing in the proposed transaction. It's column 7, column 9, and column 11. And all of the interest rate coupons actually on those rates are all either 5%. The 2020 in column 11 is actually a 4% coupon. Okay. To show you the scenarios that we have, if you go to the other handout that has the scenario 1 in the upper right corner, I just thought it'd be a little easier if we go through all of these together in a separate handout. A lot of numbers here, but again, to reiterate, the goal across the top of the page was to reduce the county's annual debt service from about $17 million per year to roughly $10 million per year, about a $7 million reduction, and then provide funds both for potential capital projects as well as your ongoing maintenance. What you're going to see in these scenarios, the only thing that's going to change as we flip through these pages is the amount that we budgeted for potential capital projects. You'll see this first one highlighted in the green box under 2024B has $9 million for the ongoing maintenance projects over the next 3 years, and then a line item for $15 million for capital projects. Just on those capital projects, working with your administration, I know they're putting some lists together of what those potential projects are. That's something that Tim will need in terms of a definition if you decide to move forward for the ordinance that you would authorize the debt to be incurred. So that's something that would have to be refined, and those projects would have to be basically identified for them to be included in the debt ordinance. So looking at this, again, while it's a lot of numbers, if we look at column 2 in the big picture, that's your existing debt that we were just looking at on the previous page. this restructuring of some of those payments, along with adding the new money, column 8, the new debt service then after the transaction, and this is assuming it would be completed by September, the debt service for the remainder for all of 2024 would be about 9.3 million. So 17 was budgeted, you'd only be paying 9. So in column 9, that would free up about $7.6 million in the current budget that would be free to basically go to the fund balance, and then potentially those funds are available for future budgets. So not only is this plan kind of lowering the run rate, but compared to what's in the budget right now, it would free up that cash to basically stay in the budget, not be expended, but to become part of your fund balance and reserves. So column 8, just to focus on that as we go down through, that's where permanently the county's debt service run rate would be just below $10 million as a result of this transaction. So that's the restructuring, providing the new money that we discussed. So obviously, another way to look at it visually, the chart at the bottom of the page with the dotted line, that's the county's existing debt right now, where it was scheduled to really drop off. Instead, it would continue at that run rate of about 10 million out through the year 2042. So this scenario, the debt service relief, we have the yellow box there at the top of column 9 over the next 4 budgets in terms of what was scheduled to be paid versus what could be paid. The debt service relief as a result of the transactions about $26 million. Okay. The only difference between each of these scenarios as you then go to scenario 2, that in the green box, we budgeted instead of 15 million for capital projects, this scenario has 20 million for capital projects. And what you'll see is the only thing that's really changing in column 8. So that annual debt service number, obviously, if you borrow some additional amount over the 15, it gets to a slightly higher run. So instead of where we were running at about 9.9 million, your run rate goes to about 10.1 at the 20 million. And then scenario 3 changes that green box to 22.5 million, and the run rate goes to about 10.25 per year. And then the final scenario included 25 million for capital projects, and the run rate there gets up to about 10.4 million per year. Other than that, nothing changes. We're still restructuring the same amount, so that really is the only difference between any of those 4 scenarios.
So, Lou, people might say, during this time, market conditions, borrowing monies may cost more. Tell me why that is not true in the municipal bond market.
I'll help answer that question. Good question. If you go back to the first handout, our last page is an interest rate chart. In terms of a quick market update, when you look at this chart, and this one goes back to the year 2000, and this is an index of municipal bond interest rates, the 10-year municipal rate, and we're on the far right currently. You can see the all-time lows we hit were during the pandemic in 2020, where interest rates went. We had never seen rates that low. And then after that, interest rates really kind of took off, and you see the line kind of went up, up, up. And we hit a high water mark at last Halloween in 2023. We have that yellow box at the bottom that says since October 30th, rates right now are 82 basis points lower than that. So we've really seen interest rates in our market come down quite a bit over the course of the last 8 or 9 months. When people see on the news that mortgage rates are still above 7%, I think people think it's a higher interest rate environment, and that's true certainly for mortgages. In our market, we're actually below 30-year averages right now. Municipal bond market is a supply and demand driven market in terms of the amount of bonds coming to market versus investors. And there's a lot of appetite for tax exempt bonds, and that supply demand has kept interest rates in our market very low. To give you an example, we did a school district transaction last week, 20-year level payments, and the interest rate that they locked in, fixed rate for 20 years, was a 375. Really pretty attractive by any of our historical standards. So in terms of borrowing any new money, doing a refinancing transaction, all of our clients are going to market right now because the rates look really attractive. Certainly there are people, some market folks that look at the fall and say, obviously, a big presidential election, there's always uncertainty around that. Nobody knows what's going to happen with interest rates. So one of the things we've clearly seen across the country is more municipal issuers, people like you, people like big turnpike authorities, have been coming to market because the market's pretty calm right now. Rates are attractive, and they're trying to get their borrowings done before any uncertainties in the fall.
And actually, the primary reason we're having this discussion is because this year we face a significant budget deficit, 54 million according to our budget director. And while we are still trying to figure out what that real number is going to be based upon some of the projections and spending for the year, the only other way to be able to make up that revenue loss, with the exception of a revenue enhancement strategy and a number of other things we've defined, would be a significant tax hike. So for us to be able to examine these options, which may provide a better interest rate environment for us from the debt perspective, as well as to try to take care of some significant capital needs during a time where we really have seen, and I know Donna knows this, a significant increase in our deductible related to our insurance claims, with many broken pipes and other issues within buildings that have went from $100,000 deductible to $500,000 deductible. Making those kind of critical infrastructure investments are not pretty. I mean, they're not going to get us headlines, but they require us to be good stewards of all of the public assets. And while we believe that, these assets are critically important, we've not had that kind of investment over the last several years that I think, in order to maintain those buildings, particularly in the areas where we have liability, need to occur in order for us to be able to address some of these concerns, as well as court concerns and concerns that I know exist at the prison. I mean, there's a number of needs that have not been addressed. Now, while this board has taken a position for the energy efficiency program over the years, with the ability for us to do energy investments to be able to save dollars and reinvest them, that has been like the single source of our ability to do capital projects. And I believe, really have a need, based upon even the initial look at significant facility investments. Without them, quite frankly, we're going to be in a position where we are going to be behind the eight ball even more, and our properties will be devalued, and clearly our insurance rates are going to continue to climb. So those are things that, again, are not sexy, not marketable from a political perspective, but I think are required when you are in charge of potentially 160 county facilities. So again, this is not going to be sexy new projects, but things that are for critical infrastructure and things that, quite frankly, have to be addressed. So sorry, I didn't mean to get on a soliloquy there.
Before we leave the numbers, the only other thing I brought along was a potential timeline for your consideration. And one of the reasons that we've discussed with the administration, the timeline, and to come before you now, is what's happening with the restructuring. When I mentioned that there would be payments that would not be made in this year's budget, is if the transaction closes by September, the transaction will be making those debt service payments that are scheduled to be made in the county budget right now, as opposed to the county's general fund. And that frees up that money to be available as surplus. So in order to maximize that benefit, those payments that are scheduled to happen by your budget director here in the fall, we need to close before that. So we've laid out a schedule for you here on page 4 that really backs up from September in order for us to meet that deadline of being closed by September, so that the bond transaction makes those scheduled payments and not the county's general fund. So on this schedule, obviously we're here today presenting the plan and asking you to consider authorizing the team to proceed to prepare a parameters ordinance where we could come back in 2 weeks and that would be your official action to incur debt. At the July 10th, you've incurred those maximum parameters where we have to inflate that for state purposes. So the amount that would be advertised in the paper would be an amount larger than what you would actually be borrowing, but that's normal. You're accustomed to that. And that would be the official action by the commissioners to incur the debt. While that happens, we would then be working with the administration to pull together your offering statement, prepare for the credit rating call with Standard & Poor's, and then the whole hope would be have all of that completed so that we could be in the market early August to actually lock in interest rates, and then everything still gets submitted to the state for their review, and we would hope to close in September, and that's when the funds would be available for your capital projects. So that's how we built the timeline of being here today.
So just two other quick questions, and I'm going to turn it over to my colleagues. For a county such as ours, AA rated, what would be our debt capacity, third-class county, such as Dauphin County?
It's driven by a state formula, and that state formula is based on the size of your budget. Your borrowing capacity is probably a number like $700 or $800 million.
And we're currently at 98.
Yeah. So you're very low by state formulas. Now, there's not a lot of counties there's probably no counties, in fact, in Pennsylvania that are right up against what the state actually allows you to borrow.
Nor am I suggesting it. I just want
Right.
to make
Yeah.
sure.
But as I mentioned at the very onset, your debt level at under 100 million is relatively low for a county your size.
And that's a real credit to previous boards, folks who have figured out a way to pay down debt, try to manage finances in a way that, did both try not to raise taxes and figure out a way to reduce future liability. So, I mean, that's great. But after 19 years without a tax increase, when you talk about inflation and those costs, the idea of a significant challenge in front of us lies. So, I feel an obligation as an elected official to figure out a way to explore all options to reduce that impact, particularly in the environment where inflation is high, the cost of living is high. The last thing we can do is just lay a huge tax increase on the back of our residents. So I think this is one step in many that we need to examine to be able to figure out a way to reduce that impact.
Right. And I think the takeaway from our team meeting with your administration, just to follow that comment up, is obviously this would just be one piece of the puzzle, but it is a permanent piece in that there's no variables here. It would be a fixed rate bond issue, and your new debt service, that reduction would be one that's in place for all of the future budgets and not just one time.
With the plan to take care of some critical infrastructure and building maintenance. Commissioner Douglas.
So we're here today because we have a $54 million deficit that we're trying to find ways to be creative about addressing. And I just want to quickly right off the bat say we're having this conversation because the consequences of 19 years without a moderate tax increase. Like a moderate tax increase would have put us in a much better position. And I just want that to be clear because we're borrowing money now in an effort, it seems, to ensure that we can pay our bills next year. So my question right out the gate is, could we restructure our debt without borrowing $15 million in capital projects? Would it have a larger impact or the same impact?
So you could certainly just do the debt restructuring without any additional funds. Yes.
If we did that, would it have a larger impact? Because as I'm looking at these as we flip through, the more we borrow, it seems like the less reduction it has. So on the first page, it's 7.1 million reduction.
Yep.
The second page is 6.9 million reduction.
Correct.
The next page is 6.8. It seems like the more we borrow, the less impact we're having on next year's budget. So I'm curious, if we were to not borrow anything, what is the debt impact? Or if we were to lower that number significantly, could we have a larger impact on next year's potential tax increase?
So the new money, if we look on those scenarios that we call them 2024B for the green boxes, that's the debt service payment as you go down column 6.
Yep.
So if there's no new money, those payments don't occur, and that would just get subtracted from the total.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Sure.
What if we want to borrow a lot more? Let's go the other direction on this question. What if I'm looking right here at $10.3 million of just projects that were pretty much just sketched out that need to happen at the prison that are like critical projects that we've been talking about for a long time. Our prison has had a massive lack of investment infrastructurally. What would be the consequence of, you're talking about how we have a lot of borrowing power in the sense of we're not using most of our credit, or at least what the state would apply. If we wanted to make this 50, is it going to have a much less impact on next year's tax decrease, obviously, because you're adding to the debt, right?
Yeah, just as you were just pointing out, as we go through these scenarios that go from 15 to 25, you can see, just comparing that 2024 new money column, we're at $1.1 million of payments on the 15 million. And when you flip to the final scenario at 25, that payment jumps to $1.9 million.
Yeah. So we're probably only looking at, like, if we were to go to 50, we might only be looking at a $5 million reduction, or roughly in that range.
Probably some number
Okay,
like that. Yeah.
Okay.
So your debt service. The other thing that we're doing, as the amount would go up, we have to go out additional years.
Sure.
So where I pointed out that we were going out to 2042, we'd probably have to go a couple more years.
Sure.
And still try and minimize
Level it
that
off.
increase.
Yeah. Okay. Today, what we're voting on today to start this agreement, can we change the bond amount were we to have these conversations and make a determination that we want to go one direction or the other, or potentially just stay with one of these four options you've handed us? We are not locked into we're not locked in just to these four scenarios. Scenarios can change between now and, I'm sure there's an off-ramp where it's like, we need to know the exact number at this point, but we don't need that today at this vote, correct?
Correct. And I'll give you the answer from the structuring standpoint of the amount for our purposes, and then I'll let Tim give you the legal part of when you have to make that decision. But what we typically see entities do when there's new money involved is kind of come up with what might be the maximum amount that you would include. Mm-hmm. And from our standpoint, we have that maximum amount that we would discuss with the rating agencies when we have that call describing what the transaction is, and say that the final amount hasn't been nailed down exactly yet. We, from our standpoint, really up until the day before we price the bonds, have the ability to change that, lower it. Mm-hmm. You can't go above it. So we have that flexibility. Legally, I'll let Tim describe really how you would set that maximum and how that works under our state law.
Great. Thanks, Lou. So good morning, Commissioners. So to answer Commissioner Douglas's question, the county does have flexibility to set the amount that you want to borrow. The county's ability to borrow is governed by the Local Government Unit Debt Act. And what the Debt Act requires is that before you consider an ordinance to approve the issuance of bonds, you have to do an advertisement, a legal advertisement. And the way these ordinances are typically run is they're referred to as parameters ordinances. So you identify what projects that you want to undertake. The general rule here is you can't borrow for things that you don't have projects in mind. So you have to identify the projects that you want to finance. You do that, and then we would work with your underwriter to determine what the max amount that you would be looking to borrow to finance those projects. So the legal advertisement that would have to be published at least 3 days before you consider the ordinance, that legal advertisement would say, we're going to borrow up to a maximum amount of X dollars, whatever the amount is. You, even after that notice goes out, you still have flexibility to change that amount. If you decided at the time of enactment that you said, we authorized this amount for purposes of ordinance, but we've decided upon further discussion that we want to lower that amount, you can do that. You can also still approve at that max amount because you're not locking yourself into borrowing that amount. In fact, most governmental issuers, when they authorize these parameters ordinances, they never are going to borrow this amount because the reality is you're authorizing that higher amount to give your underwriting team, to give the professionals the flexibility to set the terms of the bonds based on what is in the best interest of the county when you decide to act. So even that overall amount that you authorize, you might ultimately only borrow an amount significantly lower than that. And you have flexibility there until you sign the bond purchase agreement and the bonds are priced. So you have a lot of flexibility in the coming months to set the number of projects and determine the total amount that you want to borrow.
Good. Okay. If if we vote on this today, passes, but then we decide we don't want to do it, what's the consequence? First of all, is there an off ramp to then say no after we get this ball rolling? And then what's the financial penalty for pulling out of this and saying we don't want to bond altogether? Like, what would that be?
Certainly. So if you decide to proceed today, the only thing under consideration I understand today is to engage the finance team. Once engaged, we would begin working on the legal notice, the ordinance. But the county again is under no duty to proceed until you sign that bond purchase agreement.
But
meantime,
you're doing work, so I guess I'm
We
curious
are.
what are we in for at that point? Because we're
So-
making an investment in getting y'all started, so I'm
Sure.
just curious what that looks like.
So the way we've typically done our engagements with the county, which would be what we would propose with this engagement, we get paid from the proceeds of the bond issue. You don't pay us, on an hourly basis. You pay us when the transaction closes.
So if the transaction doesn't close, if we say no, we're not. There's no penalty, is what I guess I'm asking.
That's correct. If you decide not to proceed with the transaction, we wouldn't be paid for the work.
Really, the only Tim mentioned you have to run an ad in the paper
Yeah,
for
that
that
cost.
debt incurring ordinance. So the cost of advertising will have incurred for that meeting where you've authorized it. But up until we actually go into the market, which, as I said, is scheduled for early August, that up until that point, when we actually say, okay, what's the final amount that you've decided? Interest rates are good, the market's good, we're ready to price your transaction next week. That's basically about the last chance you have to say, okay, we don't want to proceed.
Thank you.
And good questions. To that end, is there any early repayment penalties?
So we would, issues like this in the past, the county's bond issues have typically had anywhere from an 8 to 10 year call feature, so that if interest rates do drop in the future after that
Refinance.
time frame, you would absolutely have the ability to refinance or restructure the debt. So as we've always done for the county, yes, there would be no penalty, but typically the market demands that type of 8 to 10 year lockout period.
And is there flexibility once we do the bond transaction? Let's say we find a grant for one of the projects. Like we're trying to advocate for external money all the time. Can we shift, or do we have the flexibility to rename projects if we find alternative sources of revenue?
Yep, certainly you can. If you identify additional sources of revenue, I mean the county is not going to disappear tomorrow. You're going to have an ongoing need to finance capital projects, right? So if you find additional grant funds to finance some of those, from a tax perspective, you generally have you have to identify the projects, and you have to have a reasonable expectation that you're going to spend those monies within 3 years. Again, that's the tax code requirement. If for that being said, again, it's based on your reasonable expectations. So if you discover a grant, or if a project decides not to proceed 2 years from now, you could then reallocate those funds to put them towards another project.
Understood. These are actually discussions about financing. I don't think we've ever had in public, and I think it's also helpful for the public to understand. So, thank you, Commissioner Priest.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As commissioners, we have a fiduciary responsibility to make improvements and routine maintenance to our aging buildings and properties, and want to make sure that the costs are not even greater down the road. But I want to make sure that we don't get into a credit card mentality as we budget and kick the can down the road to future boards of commissioners without a detailed projects plan that makes sense over the life of this financing plan. And I think it was important to hear earlier that we have engaged in ESCO projects, multiple ESCO projects over past administrations, which we put tens of millions of dollars into upgrades into our buildings, including Dauphin County Prison. But more needs to be done, and I appreciate you taking the time and presenting this detailed plan in front of us. A lot of decisions need to be made, but this is a really good start. The last thing I want to see happen is a future Board of Commissioners 10 years down the road be saddled with tens of millions of dollars in additional needs for improvements to buildings that we were aware of that needed done now. And we need to take advantage of this opportunity that's in front of us, and this detailed plan that you've presented will enable us to do so. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Are there any other questions at all?
I think my only question is for our staff to just get an idea of when are we going to see the detailed line items of capital expenditures, because I would like some time to go over that and I guess address internally the urgency of each of those particular realities.
So that's already begun. I actually have the draft here, but I am anticipating a lot more projects to come in from different department heads. So I already have about 17 million already that I have on this list, and I anticipate that growing substantially. But I'll have that to you guys within the next, probably by the end of the week, if not at the beginning of next.
Excellent. That process is critical. Thanks. Any other questions? So should we take a motion at this point, Mr. Solicitor? We have a sample motion here in front of me that clearly is about authorizing today's action. I would entertain a motion today to authorize the administration to work with Raymond James and Associates as underwriter, PFM Financial Advisors LLC as financial advisor, McNeese Wallace and Nerick as bond counsel, and the county solicitor to proceed with the issuance of general obligation notes series A of 2024, which is federally taxable, the proceeds of which will be used towards refinancing portions of the county's existing debt and ongoing maintenance projects in the approximate amount of $3 million, and the issuance of general obligation notes series B of 2024, the proceeds of which would be used towards refinancing portions of the county's existing debt. Ongoing maintenance projects yet to be determined, but in the approximate amounts of $9 million, and capital projects in the approximate amount of $15 million as a parameter today, but not final. I would ask to authorize. Do we have a motion to that effect?
So moved.
Motion made by Commissioner Prees. Is there a second? I'll second. All those in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Same sign.
I wanted to make a comment before we voted, and that is that I'm asking that the chief of staff get with the facility maintenance department, who has a 10-year project plan that they put into place to make sure that we're not doubling up on some projects that were already in the pipeline, and that these things are looked at, including emergency management and other areas.
Has that been requested?
I would ask also as a part of the public record that, when we compile that list, you sit with each commissioner to go through the extensive list, gain feedback, and understand where those priorities are before we get back to our professionals. So,
Okay, we'll do.
thank you.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Appreciate it.
So we would be back on July the 10th. We just would need to know the amount, a not to exceed amount for the capital projects number.
All right. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Next up is salary board. Ms. Fisher.
Good morning, Commissioners.
Good morning, Faye. Is there any questions today on the salary board items? I think we only have one in front of us for information technology. Any questions? Hearing none, I'd entertain a motion for salary board item A, numbers 1 and 2.
So moved.
Second.
Motion made by Commissioner Douglas, second by Commissioner Prees. Any discussion? All those in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? The ayes have it. Human Resources.
Great. Are there any questions on the personnel packet?
Any questions on the personnel packet? All right, I'd entertain a motion to adopt the personnel packet.
Can I request that we pull 92 and just vote separately on that? So I will make a motion for the approval of the personnel packet items 1 through, what is it,
11.
11, but without number 92.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
I'll make a motion for approval of item 92.
I'll second that motion. Any discussion? All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Nay.
The ayes have it. Thank you, Faye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Budget and Finance Director, Mr. Davis.
Morning, Commissioners.
Morning.
Got a bunch of stuff here for you today. I have no changes to the investment report that was distributed yesterday. I also have no changes to the TO packet. The only thing I will note on the cover where you see I wrote on it, the only thing you're voting on for that purchase order is the additional $560 since that went over the ACT award prior amount.
Got it.
27 has already been approved previously. Other than that, there is no changes. It is ready for your approval.
All right, I would entertain a motion on the purchase order report today with
So
that
moved.
amendment. Motion made by Commissioner Douglas. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Prees. Any discussion? All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign. The ayes have it.
All right.
We have some good news on these showers. Is that what I understand?
Oh yeah, we can jump to that one. This is going to take a minute, so bear with me. So, from a history standpoint, this is the third time we have bid it. First two times we failed to get the 4 required contracts, so this was our third attempt. We did get 3 bids for general construction, HVAC, and plumbing from McCoy Brothers and Eschenauer for the HVAC and plumbing. Spent a lot of time going over this with the solicitor's office, so they did a review of the law, and we reached out to Spinagle, who had been the electrical contractor on the sole bidder on the electrical contract for the prior 2 bids. They submitted pricing, for lack of a better term. So they did a review, and based on that, we are looking for a motion to conditionally accept the bids for contract 2024-04B for general construction, 2024M for HVAC, contract 2024-4 for plumbing. The condition being that all contractors must forthwith complete and submit all necessary contract paperwork to the satisfaction of the solicitor's office. And then a separate motion to conditionally award contract number 2024-04E for electrical renovations to Spinagle. The condition being that Spinagle must forthwith complete and submit all necessary contract paperwork to the satisfaction of the solicitor's office. Which is to note that the award of the electrical contract to Spinagle is consistent with the Public Contract Bid Non-Receipt Act. And the total for the entire project is $163,398.
I'll make a motion to adopt both of those motions. We can do them at the same time, right?
No, I want you to repeat everything.
Yeah, I know, right? I'm like, I don't know. Someone needs to give me notes.
Motion has been made. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second. Any discussion?
I would like to just make a point that Controller Bateman and I have long been working on this, as many on prison board have, and many out at our prison have. Just for context, we're on the juvenile portion of our prison. We have compliance where juveniles have to stay out of sight and sound of adults. It's a compliance regulation for prisons, and it will make this a lot easier if we have showers in that area of the prison where we currently don't. And because it's such a small project, it has been very challenging to bid. So we've put all these bids out multiple times, and because it's a small project, people don't bid on it, or we have 2 bids but not 1, and it's just been a real challenge to make this project an enticing project for people to bid on. So I'm very thankful for your work, the solicitor's work, everyone's work to make this happen, because it's something that we really need and we've identified as a priority. And just thankful for everyone's efforts and consistency working through this.
So just for those of you at home who are watching, the Prison Rape Elimination Act requires sight and sound separation for individuals who are deemed minors. And in this case, if they're held in an institution, you have to have both, those separations, and this will allow us to fully allow that to occur and meet the compliance of the law. The only question I always have is a budget one. What do we budget for this versus what have the bids come at? Do we know?
It was my understanding this was going to be jail fund. I don't have a budget for this project.
Make sure we get an answer to that. It's really important. What I
We have a bond we might have here in a few months. No, I'm just kidding.
I think it's also important to note here as we talk about these requirements we have. A lot of these are mandates that continue to be put on us, so we have to make these expenditures. And this has been going on over the 13 plus years I've been a commissioner now, and we've seen it with voter registration where we've doubled the actual cost of operations of the department based upon state mandates and other mandates. And here we have another ruling that tells us we must do this. So as we look at our tough budget cycle ahead of us, a lot that's been brought our way, it's brought forth by mandates that we have no say over. So just want to make that comment for the record.
Motion's been made and seconded.
Second.
All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? The ayes have it. Make sure I see those budget numbers.
Yeah, I will pull those and see if we can find something. Last item I have is the approval of the 24-25 fiscal year budget. This budget has been out in the lobby and online for the last 21 days. I have received no questions, no comments, or inquiries regarding this at all. So just as a quick refresher, the 24-25 budget, there was no changes to what was proposed. So it's an overall increase of $14.48 million or 13.58%. But the increase in county funds is only $1.33 million or 10.17 from the prior year.
With the hopes of not spending those dollars.
Yes. Yeah. There are a few departments where the state or feds, specifically aging and drug and alcohol, where they can request money later in the year, and they've generally been told that they will receive some, but there is no guarantee. So the hope is that it will be available and we can save county dollars.
I entertain a motion to finally approve the 2024-2025 approved budget summary for the fiscal year budget for those categoricals listed.
So moved.
I'll second it. I'd like to make a comment now.
Yep. A motion's been made and seconded. Comment.
Yeah, if you could, for the record, again, as you did prior, please advise the difference between this budget and the general fund budget that we vote on and put forth at the end of the year.
Yeah, certainly. So this budget is made up of our human service agencies, specifically our aging, children and youth, drug and alcohol, the consumer contributions program that's run by our aging department, MHADP, adult probation receives supervision fees, which are a part of this, our human services development fund, and our hazmat fund. Many of these departments receive the majority of their funding from state or federal agencies. So out of the $121 million in revenue that's budgeted, only $14.3 million is county funds, versus what we call the calendar year budget, which has the county's general fund, a few others such as domestic relations, 911 center, and solid waste, where the majority of that is tax revenue and other grants or funding. So that one, you can really see calendar budget, think real estate taxes.
Any other questions? Any other discussion? All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it. Thank you, Mr. Davis. Mr. Pease.
Commissioners, I am removing 3 items under 13 matters requiring board action. Numbers 69 and 91 are duplicates. Item 69 is a duplicate of item 40. Item 91 is a duplicate of number 82. The third item is the letter of indemnification, item 167. Per the solicitor's office, that is no longer needed. So items 69, 91, and 167 are stricken from matters requiring board action.
Do you need a motion to strike, or are you simply indicating that you would remove them from the agenda?
I'm indicating they've been removed from the agenda.
Okay. Any questions for Mr. Pease? Thank you, Commissioner Pease, for those 2 catches yesterday. Good stuff.
Can I ask real quick? 116. Or what was the last?
167.
67. Okay. Sorry.
All right. We are now to the matters requiring board action, items 1 through. Oh, I'm sorry, solicitor's report. Mr. Owens, I have a feeling you'll say everything's prepared, nothing bad.
I have nothing to add other than what you just said.
Thank you, sir. Any questions for Mr. Owens?
I'm going to have a couple questions on the matters requiring board action for the solicitor.
All right. Any other questions for the solicitor? Hearing none, we are now at matters requiring board action, items 1 through 184, minus the ones that have been stricken, 69, 91, and 167. Do I have a motion?
Second.
Motion's been made by Commissioner Priest, second by Commissioner Douglas. Any discussion?
First item number 176, the SEIU, MOU, and side letters. What is the definition of side letters?
They are agreements based upon the availability of funding between the union employees and management related to the distribution of those retention bonuses. In one case, there are 3 different ones, and I have them in front of me as well.
Can I get a copy of those now?
Absolutely.
Okay, that's all. That was my only question on that. My next question is for the solicitor, just for a legal standpoint here and for my edification. There's details in several of the items here that I believe are being overly descriptive to the point of being potentially intrusive, and I'm just wondering if we're opening ourselves up to liability here. And let me go over the ones I'm referring to. Number 41. UPMC Pinnacle, Child Consult, and then consultation of pornography review. Item 56, Rocco Manfredi, MD, diagnoses and treats mental illness, depression, anxiety disorders, substance abuse, schizophrenia. Most psychiatrists rely on a mix of medications and psychotherapy. And then the last one, Diacon Child Family Community Ministries, sex offenders group counseling, psychosexual evaluation with ABLE, and then medically fragile foster care level 1, 2, 3, and 4. I appreciate that we've added a lot to our agendas where they were a lot more, let's say, curtailed, and now they're very expansive. But are we potentially open to liability by having just so much in here? Is it too descriptive is my question, Mr. Solicitor.
Thank you for your question. We've had a number of meetings regarding the agenda. I believe you may have been involved in some of those. I have advocated for 1 and 2 line entries. Your question is if there's an increased exposure because of the encyclopedic nature of this agenda. And my answer is yes, there absolutely is an increased exposure. And it is my recommendation that these items do not need to be that descriptive.
Can I ask what's the concern for exposure? We're just being transparent about the services that are being provided to the public that their taxpayer dollars are paying for. I'm very confused why, if we're going to, because all that, go back, what was the first one you said, 41? So here's what 41 is going to say next time. It's going to say UPMC Pinnacle Hospitals Inc. And then it's just going to say agreement between Dauphin County and UPMC Pinnacle Hospitals Inc. And then I'm going to have to send an email and ask, what's this agreement? Instead, I see it here as a commissioner and I know what we're paying for. And I think the community and the public deserves to know what their taxpayer dollars are going to. Yes, it creates a 39-page agenda that I don't think any of us are in favor of, but this is a 2-cycle agenda system where for two agendas, from my understanding, we have this because this is all the human services contracts. I mean, I'm in favor of them staying detailed. I want to know what exactly exposure, how we would be liable for, what's the increased liability?
So I'm comfortable answering that question, Commissioner Priest's question, in very general terms. I'm uncomfortable in giving the board, the commissioners, legal advice in a public meeting.
Okay. We can talk about it later. That's fine.
But I did, Commissioner Douglas, I understand and appreciate your question and your position on this. I do. So it's something that definitely needs hashed out. But generally speaking, with the length of some of these items, there is exposure. If a claim were to come or something were to happen, this just creates a fair amount of potential discovery and cross-examination material in litigation. So the more that is included that may ultimately be unnecessary for this purpose here, I don't think it's a good idea. And I think Commissioner Prees is on the right track.
Thank you for answering my question.
Thank you.
And just to that point, I think even when I was reviewing the agenda, there was a couple of things from a taste perspective when you talk about these issues in a public forum. Yeah, I know they exist, but we should sort of curb some of the things, particularly when it relates to children's protection and exposure with the Children's Resource Center. I mean, I think it still include detail related to rates and process, but there may be pieces to this that should remain off of the agenda. But I think it's a work in progress, and let's continue to have that discussion.
I, again, just want to verify and put out there that of the 184 items we're voting on, there were only 3 that I had questions on, and I appreciate you answering, Mr. Solicitor.
Any other discussion?
I just want to emphasize number 169 and what that represents. It represents an audit of our healthcare system at Dauphin County Prison, which is something that, to my knowledge, hasn't been audited in over 2 decades or audited at all. And I think it's an important step in us continuing to increase the care of our inmate population.
Any other discussion? Hearing none, I will call the vote. All those in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Same sign. The ayes have it. Former business. New business. Commissioners' discussions and actions. Commissioner Douglas.
Sure. I just want to first thank young professionals of color for their time for the Juneteenth events that took place, the Juneteenth celebration throughout Harrisburg, and all the sponsors who helped make that happen, including our county, Dauphin County. I think those were amazing events. I got to participate in many of them. I also wanted to make sure the public was aware that the U.S. Department of Transportation announced a $25 million investment in through the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act here in Dauphin County for the CAT transfer center that's being built. I just wanted to read a couple quotes from our senators. Senator Casey said, "I fought for this funding to better connect Capital Region residents with resources and opportunities in their community and beyond. I'll keep working to deliver funding to make the region more livable for all who call it home." Senator Fetterman said, "Countless Pennsylvanians rely on public transit to get to work and school. My intern takes public transit to come here. Investing in it is critical. This funding will support the construction of a new bus facility to replace the current 120-year-old outdated facility. I'm proud to have fought for this funding alongside Senator Casey that will ensure that SRTA can continue to provide good, reliable service to Capital Region residents." So as oversight of CAT Transit, I'm just thankful for this investment in our region.
Good news. Commissioner Prees.
I want to take a moment and say a special thank you to Anthea Stebbins and the team at Parks and Recreation for the great work that they continue doing. We had a volunteer appreciation dinner last evening, and all 3 commissioners attended over at Fort Hunter. It was a great time. It was our way of saying thank you to the volunteers. Over 100 active volunteers, over 300 total, who put in 5,000 man hours last year volunteering, and 900,000 people attended our parks last year for different events. So there's a lot going on in the park system, and it was just wonderful having everyone together and us being able to tell them how much we appreciate them. And Anthea, you and your team are doing a wonderful job. Keep up the great work. Sure.
Yeah, we can give them applause. Right? Great event last night, and what a wonderful group of volunteers, and the commitment they provide is invaluable. As are so many. I think we're going to honor our aging volunteers this week as well. And I just want to do a quick shout out to, I see Randy Yeager that's here. We are finishing up the area, and I know you just had like corporal tunnel surgery, but I think we will have them after signing all of these human service contracts. But the amount of work that has went into this, from the solicitor side to the staff side, to ensure we are meeting our timelines and obligations, is nothing short of amazing. And I just want to thank you for all the work that you've put in with the staff and team. All right. Any additional discussions for the good of the order? I will not forget today. Correspondence is listed and will be taken up by the chief clerk. At this point, it's time for public participation. Is there anyone in the audience that wants to make a comment in front of the Board of Commissioners? Hearing none, I'd entertain a motion to adjourn. Motion made. Second. Meeting adjourned.